Hari Om. For a channel dedicated to highlighting the rich cultural traditions of India, I would like to begin the talk with the Vedic prayer, also called Pavaman Mantra. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, asato ma sadgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. That is, lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of wisdom or knowledge. Lead us, O Lord, from untruth or the unreal to the truth or the real. And finally, lead us from mortality to immortality. Indeed, the talk today is on paying our respects, the Hindu way, to the mortals of our families, to the departed ancestors, to help them reach immortality, and to bless us in turn. Yes, a topical topic, Shraddh, or the importance of Shraddh in Hinduism, is what I will be speaking on in the next 25 minutes. To start with, I would like to situate the ritual of Shraddh, its meanings, its importance, and ramification in the larger context of Hinduism, as the topic comes within the ambit of the series Rich Hindu Culture. Hinduism, for most people within its fold, is a way of life. It has no one pope, no inflexibly prescriptive ritual, no mandatory congregation, and no one presiding temple. It is precisely for this reason that it has continued from time immemorial, Sanatan and Anant, because what is ubiquitous but not constrained by the bitterness of form is, by definition, imperishable. So writes the writer diplomat Pawan Kumar Verma about Hinduism. Again, precisely for this reason, most Hindus, while practicing their faith in their own way, are largely uninformed about its remarkable philosophical foundations. The philosophy of Advait Vedanta, derived from the Vedas, that sees one in all and all in one, a tribute to the Vedic seers and saints, which gave to this Sanatan Dharma some of the most profound philosophical insights the world has seen, and which amazingly but not surprisingly correspond to the discoveries of contemporary science, especially in the fields of cosmology, quantum physics and neurology. Not based on mere dogma or blind belief, but on what is called the triad of Shruti, Yukti and Anubhuti. That is, the Vedic triad of scriptures, the Upanishads, logical reasoning based on them, and experience or deep intuition. Dr. Radhakrishnan hails it as one of the most scientific religions of mankind. And yet Hinduism as a philosophy is ever known separate from Hinduism as a religion. All its great acharyas, including its Adi Guru, Shankaracharyaji, while acknowledging the primacy of its non-dual Vedantic doctrine, called Paravidya, the supreme knowledge of the self, leading to moksha or liberation, the Param Purusharth, the final goal of life, stress the importance of rites and rituals, karma, karmakand, prayers, nitya bhakti, nishkam karma, and temple worship, collectively called Aparavidya, as preparatory steps within the rubric of Paravidya. All these aid in cleansing the mind, called Chitta Shuddhi, which cleansed mind becomes a repository of higher values, called Devi Sampatti in the Bhagavad Gita, and the knowledge of the self is reflected in such a calm, peaceful and single-pointed mind. The knowledge of the self, the Atman as Brahman, the ultimate reality. A clear example of how the profound and the practical meet in Hinduism. Indeed, it is through these practical tools that one is able to navigate life on an empirical level on a daily basis. This provides solace to the existential dilemma that confronts human beings. a phenomenal world which is stubbornly inexplicable. How does one explain the stark contrast in the nature of two conjoined twins, born of the same parents and growing up in the same material conditions? How does one explain the gross inequality of economic conditions, the very rich and the abject poor? Or for that matter, even explain the talent of a Mozart from the deafness of a Helen Keller? The answer is provided at a very fundamental level in Hinduism by what is called the Adrishtam, the unseen hand, for not all known reasons can ever fully explain the above. In other words, explicable by the doctrines of Karma, the Karma Siddhant, inextricably linked to the doctrine of rebirth. Both surely beliefs, but nevertheless logical beliefs. With every action having a result, a very commonsensical thing to understand, and also in keeping with the natural justice principles. The good action begets punya, and the bad begets pap. The quality of one's birth, or even the situation in life, depends on the quality of actions performed by one in this or earlier life or even lives. Hence the need for doing right, righteousness, doing one's duty or right action, otherwise called dharma in Hinduism. Understood properly, it also addresses the Western criticism that Vedantic Hinduism discounts ethics and is fatalistic. Hinduism therefore enjoins upon its practitioners, laying out in great systematic treatises through its many Dharma Sutra, Griha Sutra and Dharma Shastra, aphorisms and scriptures, the correct manner in which life is to be lived, right from the moment one is born till one meets with death, and right from the time one wakes up in the morning till he retires to sleep. Generic terms for what is called Vidhi Pratishedh or Vidhi Nishedh, do's and don'ts of righteous living. For sure, achar, one's conduct, being as important as vichar. Krishna too in the Bhagavad Gita, while explaining the highest philosophy to Arjuna, calls upon him to do his Kshatriya duty, Kshatriya Dharma, in a selfless spirit of surrender to the Supreme, to be able to further his own spiritual evolution. It is within the framework of right daily living that even Shraddha or prayers, offerings, oblations for the departed ancestors becomes intelligible. It is one of the 5 yagyas or sacrifices, daily yagyas, 5 Panch Mahayagya, that a householder is called upon to perform, that is crucial to the householder's spiritual progress. Each of these yagyas addresses a crucial aspect of his immediate and larger ecosystem as a householder. It emphasizes that he is not a separate, isolated entity, but part of a greater whole. The yagyas are Brahma, Dev, Pitri, Bhut, Manushya or Atithi Yagya. His knowledge both of the material world and the spiritual come from studying the scriptures as revealed to the rishis by gods. Hence, Brahma Yagya or Rishi Yagya, studying and teaching the scriptures, forms part of his daily duties. His body is nourished by the milk of cows, grains, vegetables, fruits, and the 5 elements, hence Bhut Yagya. The Devas and the Pitar bless him, hence Dev Yagya or Pitri Yagya. He therefore owes a 5-fold debt to nature. He must pay back by performing the sacrifices so enshrined. Tarpan, or offering water or til, that is sesame, to ancestors on a daily basis, is a kind of daily shraddha with Hindu scriptures enjoined upon him. Apart from daily tarpan is the shraddha performed after the death and cremation, that is antim sanskar or antyeshti, which is called Pindadan, whereby cooked rice balls mixed with sesame till is offered to crows, considered agents of Lord of Death, Yamraj. An important ritual believed to ease the journey of the dead ancestors on their way to salvation or on their way to other worlds. Amongst others, the Gaya Pindadan is considered very holy. It is said that even the goddess Sita performed Pindadan for Lord Dashrath here. Even a living person, desirous of freeing himself from the unrelenting cycle of birth and death, can perform Pindadan for himself at Gaya, the place being sanctified by none other than the Asur Gaya or Gayasur, Gaya being named after him, a great Vishnu Bhakt and blessed by him, whose body, it is said, transformed itself as a holy place for the performance of Shraddh or Pindadan for ancestors. Besides the daily Tarpan, it is Shraddh performed for particular reasons. Example, to beget a son, or for occasions, special occasions like festivals, called Naimittik and Parvanik Shraddh. The Puranas, the Hindu holy texts that antedated the Vedas and rightly described by none other than Sadhu Vaswani himself as the wisdom or received truths of a race or community, turning into symbolic truths over the millennia. Describe in great details, especially the Vayu, Garud, Agni and the Matsya Puran, the various kinds of Shraddhs, their performances, the place, the time, who is to perform. There are at least 5 to 7 types, going even up to 12 kinds of Shraddh listed therein. Nitya, Naimittik, Kamya, Vriddhi, Sampindan, Parvan, Goshti, Nandi, Mahalay, Bharani and Triveni. The most well-known, popular and obviously important is what goes by the name of Pitri Paksh Shraddh, the lunar cycle that takes place for 16 days this year, starting 2nd September, and is generally offered in the Krishna Paksh fortnight of the Ashwin or Bhadrapad months of the Hindu calendar, corresponding to the months of August and September. As during the Pitru Paksh, the Pitrs or the ancestors are said to descend from their abode in the Pitralok to earthly plains in search for food and water and other offerings, and come to their respective homes in their subtle bodies or Sukshma Sharir. Mark the words from the Matsya Puran. Let a householder performing the Shraddh invite with great humility the Brahmins for the purpose of Shraddh at least a day or two in advance. And I quote from Hindi from the Puran. पितर वायु रूप होकर उन ब्राह्मणों के पीछे चलते हैं जो श्राद्ध कराते हैं, तथा उनके बैठ जाने पर पितर भी उनके समीप बैठ जाते हैं। श्राद्ध कर्ता क्रोध रहित हो, शौचाचार परायण हो एवं ब्रह्मचर्य में स्थित हो. Mark the austerities, the disciplines required in the performance of the Shraddh itself. The Shraddh of the ancestor is performed on the lunar tithi, the date on which she passed away, but exceptions are certain tithis considered more conducive for certain types of ancestors. Pratipada Shraddh for the maternal grandparents, Nana Nani. Panchami Shraddh for the unmarried dead. Avidya Navami for wives who died before their husbands. Dwadashi Shraddh for sannyasis, etc. Ghat Chaturdashi for those who meet violent sudden deaths. Dwadashi for sannyasis. Shraddh etymologically derives from the word Shraddha. Shraddhaya diyate yasma tasma shraddham nigadyate. That which is given with great reverence and obeisance is called Shraddh. An act performed with all sincerity and faith, a ritual performed to satiate one's ancestors, expressing one's unconditional reverence towards them. Swami Vivekananda defined Shraddha as having shades of higher value and mental attitude that took Nachiketa, a boy of 8, at the doorstep of Yam, the Lord of Death, in his sincere quest for the secrets of afterlife. The origin or practice of the ritual is traced to Rishi Atri, one of the 10 sons of Brahmaji, by whom the ritual was devised. It is said that when Nimi Rishi, grieved by the death of his son and guided by Narad Muni, started invoking his ancestors, they appeared before him and said, Nimi, your son has already taken his place amongst Pitridev, since you have performed the act of feeding and worshipping the soul of your departed son. It is the same as if you have performed Pitriyad. Since then, Shraddha has been an important ritual in Sanatan Dharma. The Matsya Puran, which describes the Matsya avatar of Lord Vishnu, gives in great details how, when to perform each kind of Shraddha, what Brahmins to perform, what Brahmins to exclude, the oblations to be offered, of course the benefits accruing to the performer, and the Pitar, who in turn blesses the Shraddhakarta with material and spiritual well-being. Because Shraddha eases the onward journey of the dead. Those abstaining from Shraddha are said to anger the Pitars and incur their wrath and could even be cursed, a term that describes Pitridosh. While the performance of Shraddha again is in keeping with the Hindu belief in transmigration and rebirth, a belief one must hasten to add is in no way dogmatic or simplistic, but indeed very logical. One must also add, especially for those who decry Hindu ritual, that every religion and civilization, be it Christian, Islamic, Judaism, ancient Egyptian or Mesopotamian, all have in some form or another endorsed the faith in afterlife, the resurrection of Christ in Christianity, or the promise of an afterlife in Islam, the promised land in Judaism, the burial of favorite articles of queens and kings of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia in their graves, the embalming of mummies, all point in the same direction. The Matsya Puran calls the Pitars the ancestors, the primary god of the householder or the grihast. So important it holds the performance of Shraddha. Indeed, we owe it all to our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, uncles, aunts, for even before one becomes aware of Devi or Devta as objects of worship, one learns life's most important lessons from one's own parents and elders in the family. For whose hand did we hold in taking our first steps, in learning to eat our first morsels, in learning to wipe our backs, or in learning our first alphabet? One could go on endlessly. Indeed, so great is the debt we owe to them that it is not surprising that the Matsya Puran calls the ancestors, the householders, primary gods. If only we were to take a moment to pause and think carefully, one could not discount the importance of Shraddha in our daily lives. To those dismissive of Shraddhas as unscientific, and superstition, and a waste of wealth on the dead and gone, whereas such wealth could have been easily spent on the living, the poor, the needy, the schools and the hospitals, Karna's story from the Mahabharata is instructive. Upon dying, Karna's spirit went to heaven and was offered silver trimmings to sustain himself there. When he complained to Lord Indra, he was promptly reminded that Karna too had given gold and silver to the poor, but never food to his ancestors. When Karn said that he was not aware about such a ceremony, he was given 15 days to go back to the earth and offer food and other offerings in the name of his ancestors, which he did. In fact, let it be known that social service or material advancement through socio-economic upliftment of the individual is an entire topic for Hinduism and goes by the name of Abhyuday in the Bhagavad Gita. As befits the channel by the name of Global Sindhi Junction, I would like to ring in the words of the great Sindhi saint of our time, Sadhu Vaswani. In his select writings entitled There is No Death, wherein, in his characteristic style of expression that would express the grandest and the simplest of ways to the most ordinary of the men, he said, and I quote, "There is no death. When the body dies, you don't. Death only touches the mortal body, the physical body. Death cannot touch you. The body is the boat meant to take you to the other shore. Therefore, take care of the body, but do not for a single moment identify with it. Just like the sunset is only an appearance, for what is sunset here is sunrise elsewhere. In reality, the sun never sets. Likewise, there is no death. Death is only an illusion. For a death here is birth elsewhere." He was echoing the Bhagavad Gita in his inimitable style. Vansansi jirnani yatha vihar. Between death here and birth elsewhere, he goes on to say, to ease the Jivatma's onward journey, remember the Jivatma in your prayers every day. Do some little deeds of service in their name. This will bless them and help them in their new journey. I am sure he is alluding to Shraddha. Indeed, as Alfred Tennyson said, "Pray for my soul, for more things are wrought by prayers than this world dreams of." Thank you all. Many thanks to the organizers for the great job they have been doing in bringing out this series, keeping aloft the torch of culture, and of course to the viewers who have tuned in what was definitely not an easy listening. Hari Om.